streaming already? Let's mingle. Go for it.
We've got a few people that haven't introduced themselves. So I've got Kevin, Nikki, Matt, Adrian, Neil. I don't know if Neil is new or I'm just not putting because without the face. Matt, I feel like Matt, were you?
Yeah, Matt, I was here last meeting for Michelle Backles in the meditation through code presentation, which
was amazing.
It was great. It really stuck with me for a couple of days and went through my head. Some of the stuff was really just fascinating. Particularly your little app with the dog. I thought that was really cute. I showed that.
Matt, you're in the midst of a coding boot camp, right?
I'm just finishing mine at Career Foundry.
Oh, right. Okay.
And yeah, so I think it's really interesting to be here remote, connected to everyone on Zoom. I think I was saying the other week to my mentor or someone on here that I never envisioned my development career to be, in my home office on a webcam. But, I think, twice a month, this is a great organization where I can stay, connected with some people and learn some cool things along the way. So I think it's a good way to switch it up.
I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. It is quite a difference to be able to work from home, and I can't even imagine what it is to start this way. I've heard reports that there are several companies who are simply going to stay this way. You know what I mean? WordPress was early on, the makers of WordPress, but Facebook is talking about, Google is talking about just making this a natural thing. So what do you guys feel? Does anybody like working from home?
All the way. Work from home all the way.
Enrique, have you ever worked from home? I mean, did you work from home in your existing companies?
Not as a developer. So, I mean, didn't get my job as a developer since 3.5 years ago, full-time as a developer. But that first job as a developer was fully remote. And it's been like that since. So just a 1.5 years before the pandemic. But to me, I was driving about an hour and 10 minutes each way to Fort Lauderdale for about 7.5 years. So I did not miss that at all. So to me, remote all the way.
This is Gina, and I will say that I started back before all this using the virtual realm to interface with my clients throughout the US and programming. And it was Placeware back then. You remember? I don't know if some of y'all are too young even to remember perhaps when it first came out. But I tell you, it was allowed me to be do national work, and I just love it. It's great. I'm glad to see that it's the technology's changed, and it's it's a great tool.
So, Joel is a professional, developer advocate. He's been to different worlds, and I talk to him and I say, one of these days, I wish I would be like him. But one of the things is that in certain companies, Joel, please correct me if I'm wrong. Certain companies, they will not, even though you're going to be traveling, they want you to be in a particular location. And one of them where I got pretty far was Google, and they pretty much said, perfect, sounds good. Move to, of course, San Francisco, Denver, Atlanta, that was the closest one, or New York. And I was like, I'll be traveling all the time. Why can't I be remote?
Yeah, I had the exact same experience with Google, not to name them, but same thing. It's a job that involves about 60 to 80% travel time, and they wanted me to move to another country, to California, to the US and then to California.
Right.
Yeah, and I said no. I'll miss my snow during winter. So I decided to stay here.
You had at least said Toronto. I think that was one of the options that they didn't. Oh, they have an office. I guess I don't know if they have an office.
Not at that time. They have one now south of Toronto.
So wait, you both worked for Google?
No, we both were going to become developer advocates for Google, and we got to the point at which they kind of said, "Perfect, sounds good, but you have to choose one of these cities."
Got it. Cool.
So they didn't, I was actually in San Francisco for the interview, and they said that fairly early on. I was trying to see if I could, impress them enough. Well, I guess I'm sure there are certain people that are allowed to work remotely once they've worked long enough at the local company, but I guess not the new people, if we walk in.
Yes, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kevin Choi. I'm a new student for Boca Code. 2 years ago, I went to I went to a boot camp, but it was really hard for me to remember everything. So never give up. And I'm continuing to code, and I want to find some mentorship, and I just really want to be a good software engineer. I had a kind of a career change. I was a business owner for 10 years and then pivoted to tech because I see that just coding and tech is the future for everything. And then at the same time, I met a senior developer and I co-founded resources.co. It's a open source company working with data, interacting with data and APIs. Excited.
I gotta say, you're in the right place, Kevin. I became a developer because of this group of people, to be honest. They've helped me through make a career change as well and got me where I'm at. So
awesome. Thank you for that, Enrique.
He's exaggerating, by the way. He was already a developer when we met him and all that. So he can't
not
blame
exaggerating
us. You cannot blame us for anything like that. That's
it's actually like 40% Damien's fault, 50% Jerbo.
I will not take blame for that. I will not take blame for that.
But I do attend a lot of I used to attend a lot of meetups, live events, and Boca Code or BocaJS has always, FloridaJS now has always been one of my favorite. Like I really look forward. Well, one for being in Florida in the middle of winter, but also because there's such a great community. It's always a very welcoming place to be at, and I've been there 3 times now, I think.
Definitely, yes, absolutely, yeah.
This would be the 4th.
You're always welcome back.
Absolutely.
We love it.
Yeah, I reached out to Joel because it was like, it was time. It was time. We missed him. And in fact, what's amazing, I wanted to leave it a little bit later. I'm going to repeat a little bit later. The last in-person meetup was Joel. And it was great, packed as always. And that's where we talked about what Tom mentioned earlier. Thank you for bringing that up. The restaurant, analogy for when it comes to APIs and backends to the front end, which is fantastic.
Kubernetes,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And so now it's a great honor to bring them back and to see it's always great. Joel, you're amazing, and I look forward to always learning from you to become a developer advocate as well as all the things you teach us. For different things. All right, so it's about 6:45. I'm going to take that as my chance to, if I'm ready here. Am I ready here? I don't think I am ready here. So I'm going to put my slides up there. When we have slides, if there's slides available from the speaker or there's slides that is from that we're presenting, they're usually at slides.floridajs.com. You'll see them just a second, but just for you all to know. So let's go ahead and, my goodness, what is going to happen? Okay, I'm in full screen. So you'll see which one is the professional and it ain't me. All right, so let me just do a little presentation.
I'm surprised you don't have a green screen setup, because every time I went to the meetup in person, you always had like the best audio gear and all the best equipment.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I did have. I actually do. It's sitting. It's literally sitting right over here. I just I wanted instead to, because I've had so many meetings, make a nice little meetup. So I have the old posters for the group when it was FloridaJS, and then the other one, and the other one. You guys can't see me. You can see the screen. Okay. I'm going to stop talking that way. But thank you for that, Joel. And I look forward to one day having some nice little, what am I trying to say? I have no idea. Okay, let's just talk. We're here to see Mr. Joel. He is one of the best speakers we have. We brought him back. But before we do that, we just want to go ahead and let you guys know a little bit about FloridaJS and what we are. We're 3 different groups that joined together to become one. We're Jeremy's Palm Beach JavaScript, my BocaJS, for which Joel has presented before, and the Genies React Fort Lauderdale. We joined all because we seem to be pretty much having the same kind of speakers or having the same kind of events. So we figured, let's go ahead and make it a little bit more interesting by joining. We do have 2 events every month. This being the first of them, the first Tuesday of the month, we have Joel, and then the end of the month we will have April 27th. We're also sort of collaborating with a couple of different groups. Since we're all virtual, we're allowed to do that. So I placed in there for anybody that'd be interested on the 14th a link to the event that will be on the West Coast, so San Francisco. So therefore it's at, or LA, pardon me. Therefore it's at 9 p.m., not the regular 6 o'clock. And it's sort of document databases and JavaScript developers with MongoDB. In other words, learn how to do MongoDB, the basics. You'll learn, for anybody that's in Boca Code, you'll learn it much better over there. This is sort of an top level view of it. Just be aware of it. Of course, FloridaJS.com is how you get to it. If you like what you see here, definitely follow Joel, follow everybody that's been talking. But do me a favor, go ahead and go to youtube.com/FloridaJS and hit up follow there if you don't mind. It makes me feel better. It makes my, makes me glee. We are part of the, Jeremy, are you there? Okay. We are part of the Tech Hub South Florida, also known in the past as Palm Beach Tech. Now they've changed their names, and we're always there. Todd's always there. Jeremy, myself, at the Slack channel, specifically the developer channel. You'll be finding us there. You can find out new events there. You can find different gigs of hiring if you're looking for a job, and definitely join the developer channel. It isn't automatic, but it is available. It is public, and you'll find us over there. Jeremy is the head of the Code Palm Beach, an organization that helps kids. Really, it's at this moment kids to learn to develop. So feel free to join us at codepalmbeach.org, and you can volunteer. And it's easy, even if you're just starting off, to figure out how you'll be able to help and sort of see. All you have to do is have the very basics, and you'll be able to teach them kids. We already have the courses in there. You don't have to come in with a course. So check them out if you're interested in helping. But you're not here for me to talk. In fact, maybe you are, but truly what I'm here for is Mr. Joel Lord. Like I mentioned before, and I'm mentioning it really just for the video. Joel was the last in-person speaker that we had before we went virtual last year. We've been okay, but we definitely miss it. And to see his happy face, is very skinnier than before face, which I'm very jealous of. I need that. It's one of the things that we definitely miss. So I'm going to now stop sharing.
Well, if you missed the extra weight, don't worry, Joel. You didn't lose it. I found it. It's right here. All the weight you lost in COVID, don't worry, I gained it. So it's conservation of mass. Conservation of mass, right?
I'll get back to that at the end of the presentation, actually.
Okay.
That's actually very funny.
I love it.
And I know why, but you don't yet.
Is that one of those filters? If so, I'll take that as well.
Should I get started?
Please. It's all yours, sir.
Good. Hi, everyone. And let me just figure out. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Cool. So I'm not looking at Zoom anymore. It's actually down there somewhere. So I kind of see the chat if anybody has anything to mention during the presentation. But yeah, let's just jump right into the topic. So one of the, just at the end of last year, March 3rd was the last presentation that I did, and that was at BocaJS. And just about around that time, I was discussing with some other people, and actually I think that was at the, what's it called? What's the code camp at the, at Fort Lauderdale. Anyways, the same week as I always go at BocaJS. I was there at that event, and I was discussing with other people. And we were trying to figure out if there would be a way, and we're kind of joking, but you go to all those events, and it's nice. You get to meet all of those people, and you get great conversation with a bunch of people. But sometimes, there's conversations that are, well, maybe not as good. So I was trying to figure out if there would be a way for me to be able to predict if I was going to have a good conversation with someone or not, based on a bunch of different things. And it kind of all started out as a joke, but since there was a lockdown and I had nothing else to do, well, I ended up building such an app. Which is kind of the unethical part of my presentation today, and we'll get back to that. But let me just kind of still introduce, there was a lot of cool findings that I did throughout this application. And I've noticed that there's a lot of new coders here, and I strongly encourage you to try to do that. Whenever you have a crazy idea, you have something fun that you're thinking about, give it a try and just explore and try to hack your way through a few libraries and a little bit of code. And sometimes you just end up building some things that are really, really fun. And it's usually a very, very good learning experience. And that's actually the case for me today. There's a few technologies that I was familiar with that I wanted to use as part of a project, but I also learned a lot of different things. So I'll get started with this presentation. So Node.js, machine learning, Kubernetes, and unethical face recognition. But as soon as I find my cursor, but just before I get started, let me introduce myself, although Damien already did a good job at it. But hi, my name is Joel. I'm currently based in Ottawa, Canada. I am technically just on the other side of the river, hence I'm French Canadian. So that's the charming little lovely accent that you might have noticed there. I work as a developer advocate for Red Hat OpenShift. So basically my job is, or pre-pandemic, was to just go at various events, various community events, and be there and share information and try to help software developers to learn more about technologies like containers and Kubernetes, which is my main focus at the moment. If you ever want to get in touch with me, I love Twitter. That's always the best way to get in touch with me. So that's Joel with 2 underscores, Lord. It's kind of a weird handle, but whatever, it works. Also, take a note. You should probably get your phone out right now and follow me on Twitter, because we're actually going to use that during the presentation today. Okay, so back to what I had in mind. I wanted to build an application to be able to rate and score people in a very unethical way to detect or to predict if I would be able to have a good conversation with them. So what is it that I need? There are a few things that I needed at first. I was trying to figure out what it is that I'll need to find to build this application. And the first thing would be to find some sort of public data source. I needed to find a place where I could get pictures of people and a bunch of information about them. Then I would need a way to detect the faces and score that. So that's kind of the face recognition part that you're going to see today. And then I needed to deploy all the things. Now, I was a software developer, like a pure hardcore software developer for many years. That's what I did for probably 20 years or so now, over 20 years now. And I used to, just write software and then give that to a team of system administrators that would take care of deploying those applications. And since I joined Red Hat about 18 months, close to 2 years now, I had to learn about all those technologies like containers and Kubernetes, and that was all new for me. So I never really had a chance to build a real application. I mainly built, well, this is still kind of a demo application or a prototype, but it's still kind of one of my first experience hands-on, and I actually really enjoyed that part. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on how I managed to deploy this application. So the first thing I needed was some sort of public data source, and I was thinking, like, I need to find like a data set with pictures of people and their names. So I can kind of match the two, and then train my computer to be able to recognize those people. And ideally, I would also need to have some sort of some information about them and to be able to be able to rate them. That was kind of my ultimate goal, right? And I was like, well, okay, well that was my first blocker. It was surely. There is, nobody will want to share all of that information publicly. Wrong. Twitter is there for that. So Twitter, there's so much information available for you. If you ever want to explore any sort of application and you want to play around with some APIs, Twitter has a great API with tons of data. So it's a great source of public data. People will obviously have a profile picture there. You can do sentiment analysis. We'll see that. You can get information about the people's followers and so on. And they have an API so you can connect and get access to all of that information. So great source of public information that you can use there. So if you have ever did some sort of JavaScript, by now you probably know that the job of a JavaScript developer is pretty much just to run npm install and then glue some libraries together. So that was the first thing that I decided to do: npm install -- save to install it to your package.json file, and just install the Twitter node module. So Twitter gives you access to the Twitter API in a very nice syntax, kind of easy to use. The only part that was a little bit trickier using the module is that Twitter's API is old, and the terminology and a lot of different things kind of changed in the naming of things along the way. So, so in this case, what I did here is to connect to the Twitter client. I pass it my keys, which obviously I didn't paste in here. And then I can do some get calls. So I can get the list of my followers, for example, and then I can just get all of my followers. There's a few things here, like you can get followers /IDs, yeah, so that will get the list of all the IDs. So if you do calls like followers /lists, you are restricted to, I believe it was 200 results per call, and then it'll give you a cursor that you need to use for the next call to get the next 200. And so on. And the API is rate limited, so you're not allowed to do more than 1 call per second, more or less. So if you want to get a list of followers, you actually have to make a first call and then wait a few seconds and then make a second call in order to ensure that you don't hit those rate limits. So what I ended up doing in order to be able to get all the information that I needed about all of my followers is to do a get call to get all of my follower IDs. And then with the Twitter node module, you can actually create streams as well. So a stream is just a way to get all the information that is coming. And basically, you can get all of Twitter's information at any given time, like all of it. But your laptop will probably blow up. So be careful not to use it directly. Put in a filter. So this is what I did here. I put in a filter and I said, well, just take all of my follower IDs, and I want all the statuses that are related to any of my followers by any shape or form. So that's either a tweet by them, or a mention of them, or a reply, or just anything that has to do with my followers. And now that I have a stream, well, I can use the event on tweet, and for every tweet that comes in, I can have access to that information. Now you can see here that to get the handle, the Twitter handle, you actually have to do twitter.user.screen_name, because originally in the first version of the API, they were called screen names. So that's when I said, like, the naming is a little bit hard to follow, just because we have new terms now. We talk about tweets as well all the time. Well, tweets didn't exist when Twitter started. So it was using statuses instead. Another thing is that if you want the extended tweets, so Twitter extended the tweets from 140 to 280, I think, characters now. So if you receive an extended tweet, you actually have to verify that it is one, and then get the full text. So there's a few little kinks there, but overall, very, very easy to use. So great way to get some public source of information. So I've connected my slide deck to Twitter, because why not? And let me just, and I told you should be following me by now. So now if anybody is posting anything, in theory, it should show up. I'm totally dependent on the internet at the moment to be tweeting something. And now I'm getting worried. Like, I'm wondering if it's actually connected or not. So I'll just open up my console.
Yeah, actually, I just posted something.
Did you? Oh, well, there you go. Could not connect to WebSocket. So there's an issue there. Let's just restart the application. And well, I just noticed that I have some new followers. So there you go. Actually, that's interesting. Let's just pull this up. And I needed a new follower. So you can see that I have some stuff going on in the background. And we'll get back to that. But that's actually interesting to see that there's new followers listening in. All right, so let's just refresh to be sure, and then I should be getting something like anytime now. Fun fact, my last presentation at BocaJS, my demo didn't work. So I don't understand why Damien keeps saying that I'm a good presenter, because apparently they always fail. So there doesn't seem to be anything going on, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll get back to that. Don't worry. Don't hold that tweet. Just get ready to tweet in just a few minutes, because we'll get back to it.
Oh, I just tweeted.
Oh, really? Why is it not showing up?
Joel, in the past, I've seen that it takes forever, Twitter. Like I've done a couple of hackathons with it. No, and you've tested it a million times, but I always found that it seemed to take a while. So
yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'll get back to that anyways. We'll have another chance to see it in a few minutes. So anyways, in theory, I now have access to your face and your tweets, right? So I was able to, what you didn't see is that I was able to display the profile picture followed by the tweet. So now what? Well, now that I had some sort of information to get started with, it was time for me to start rating the people, right? Because that was what I wanted to do. It's probably what you shouldn't do, but yeah. So the one thing that I decided to do is to use a little bit of machine learning magic, and I wanted to get some criteria out there. So I want to make sure that you have a good following yourself, because I don't want to talk to a nobody, right? That's you need to follow other people as well, just to have like a wide range of opinions. And one very important thing is that I wanted to make sure that your tweets are generally positive. That's important to me. So
Joel,
what did I do?
Real quick, sorry to interrupt, but did you have a filter on your tweets? You said something about adding a filter. Did you have a filter on them?
The filter was on my followers.
Okay. So anything that any one of us tweet, it should have come through.
Yeah. See, there's been a few since.
Okay.
Ring Central, Developer Jack. It's not you. Nah. Not sure why it's okay. Well, let's not worry about that for now. Hopefully we have another chance to actually practice that with some machine learning this time. So yeah, machine learning, that's what I decided to use. That is by far the best image to describe machine learning, in my opinion. So machine learning, if you're not familiar with it, it's the study of computer algorithms that improve automatically through experience. It's a subset of artificial intelligence. Machine learning algorithms build a mathematical model based on sample data known as training data, in order to make predictions or decisions without being explicitly programmed to do so. All right, fair enough. So I decided to do some machine learning. Now, I have a bachelor in astrophysics. I'm not scared of maths. So I decided to jump right into TensorFlow and to transform all of that data in mathematical models. And it turns out that TensorFlow is not as easy as I thought it would be. So trying to figure out how to convert all of your information into mathematical models can be really, really hard. You can't just jump into it. You'll have to get some sort of training before you get started. And there are a few tutorials, but it's still kind of, the learning curve is really steep, and I didn't have that much time. So I was almost to the point of giving up. Because training a model is hard, it's complex. I looked at some cloud providers, but it is very expensive. So yeah, they'll give you some free credits to use their platform. But if you want to do machine learning, you will quickly take all of those credits, and you'll actually need to pay for some more. So there is some tooling available. It kind of works, but what I've learned through my research is that, well, you don't need to train a data model. You can actually use a model that is already trained and just take that as your starting point. And then if you need to tweak it, you can add a little bit more machine learning to it. But there are some pre-trained models that exist. And that's when I've discovered faceapi.js, which is a JavaScript library that will help you with face detection, recognition, expression detection. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. So the first thing, face detection, I was like, okay, that seems easy enough. And I just need to find the folder right here. In here, I've got some sample data. So the first thing that I did, of course, was to take a picture of me. And there it is. And in a few seconds, it loads up the model. And there it is. So it detected my face. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. So you have two big faces of myself. So you can see that it drew a blue box around my face. I figured, that's an easy one. I'm straight ahead of the camera. Like, all right. Let's see if we can make it a little bit harder for the algorithm. So I tried to hide in a corner, and yep, it could still detect my face. I was pretty impressed. I tried, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna totally trick the system, and I'm going to hide in a corner without my glasses. And of course, it's going to detect the face easier without my glasses. I don't know why I thought it would be harder. It's just the fact that I'm seeing myself with glasses all the time. But yeah, so it detected my face once again. So I'm now able to detect a face in an image. So that's my first step. I'm almost there. So another thing that it does is to actually detect face landmarks. And face landmarks is what we will need to do face recognition. So basically face landmarks, and you can see those little dots in my face here, the pink dots and the cyan lines. Basically, it will find 68 data points in your face. And then based on those points, it will calculate, it will try to transpose it to put your face as if it was facing directly towards the camera, then detect the ratios between all of those points. And that is the data that will be used for face recognition. So yeah, so if I take the picture that I had from me facing the camera directly, you can see the points a little bit better. So you can see the eyes, the eyebrows, nose, and mouth being detected accurately. Fun thing, it also does face expressions. That was absolutely useless for my use case, but I thought it was actually fun to play around with it. So of course, that's my neutral face, but I decided to just try it with funny faces and stuff. And all right, so that's angry and surprised, I guess, kind of. Yeah, what else do I have in here? Yeah, that's definitely my angry face, and yeah, that's really accurate. So there's a lot of really fun stuff that you can do. Play around with that library. They have a lot of a good playground that you can use and explore. Fun thing about it is that it is also, you can actually use it both in your browser, as I'm doing right here, or in Node.js. So you just import the library when using Node.js. Or you just use a script tag, you can use it from a CDN directly, and you're able to use Face API directly. Now, there's a little bit of manipulation that you'll need to do if you want to upload an image and then use that image. So basically, you need to upload that image and read it as a data URL. And then you'll post that into a canvas, and you'll be able to use it. To use faceapi.js, you have access to the Face API global object, faceapi.nets, to load your models. So you just specify which model that you want to use. In my case, I've used SSD Mobile Net V1. So they provide all the documentation, and they explain way better than I could do the difference between all the models. SSD Mobile Net 1 is the one that I've used. It's a little bit slow, but it's pretty good at doing face recognition and detection. That's the one I've used in my demos. So you just load that model, and also the face landmarks. So you'll also need to load another model. So those are the pre-trained model that I was discussing. So no need to train your machine learning algorithm, just use those models. They're made and they're available for you. Now that I had this, I was able to put that image into a canvas, and Face API uses a canvas object to manipulate and do all of its manipulation. So now that I have my image drawn into the canvas, I can just use Face API detect all faces, so that will detect all the faces in the image. And you can add the landmarks and the face descriptors. Face descriptors is basically a mathematical transposition of all the data that it found. And then there's also really cool, they have a draw method that you can use. So that's what I've used to draw the rectangle around my face when it detected it. So just use draw detection, and it will just automatically put in or add it to the canvas, which makes it a lot easier to do stuff with those canvas. If you're using Node.js, obviously there's no canvas object in Node.js, but you can use Node Canvas and then monkey patch Face API, and it actually has a method to do that. So you basically just load up Node Canvas and you pass in the objects that it needs. And then I was able to, so to train those images, I do the same thing, detect all faces with face landmarks when I do it in Node.js. So the syntax is exactly the same, both in the browser and Node.js. So far I'm able to do detection, but what about recognition? So face recognition is very different, right? I want to find someone in an image, not just a face. Well, it also does that. And in here, you can see that I've trained my model with a single image, which is my neutral face that I had previously. And if I load up an image, and I gave it both the image and a label. So I said, this image belongs to Joel. And you can see here that it recognized it with 0 distance. Pretty cool, isn't it? You're probably thinking that I cheated and I'm using both the same image. So it's kind of normal that it did a recognition here. So let's try another image. Let's try the one where I hide in the corner, and there it is. So I'm still detected. So I was thinking, well, what if I tried, I'm always, wearing the same shirt, maybe, yeah, let's try with a completely different angle from a different point of view, and let's just take that image here from me in front of the CN Tower, and it still detects me. It detects me, but it also detects someone else in the picture, as you might have noticed, which is my lovely wife there. So let's see if we can actually train this model to provide it with more information so that it actually detects my wife in here. So I can add more pictures of myself just to train our model a little bit more, see if it does a better recognition. I'll also add just one last picture. Why didn't it pick it up? All right, there it is. One picture of my wife here with sunglasses on, which is an interesting thing to note. I didn't even realize it when I tried this for the first time, but then I realized that she actually had sunglasses in here. And let's take a look. There it is. So Joel and Natasha, they've been both successfully detected in that image with one single image wearing sunglasses. Pretty scary, isn't it? So to do face recognition, once again, you can use the Face API library. Just use a promise, and what you will do basically is that you will loop through all of your images, and you will give it a name, so the name of the image, and then I fetch this image into Face API. I ask Face API to get the full face description, so the face descriptors, that mathematical representation of my face. So I try to detect a single face, and then I train it with that face. I also give it a label. So in this case, it was Joel. So I detect the face, and I say, well, this is Joel, and I do a bunch of those images. Once I have an array of descriptors, I can create a labeled face descriptors object, which will have both the face descriptors and the labels. Once I have that object, I can still use Face API, use what is called the face matcher object. And then I just give it my object with the labeled face descriptors. And I just give it a distance, like how close you want to be to finding the right person. And then for every image, for every face that you find in an image, just identify the best matches and with the names. So that's what I did here. And I was able to find the two people on that image. If you're interested in faceapi.js, you can see here that they have the Face API.js playground. Take a look. It's an amazing playground. You can just explore it. I've mentioned there's different models, and you saw like it took a second to load mobile NetV1. If we switch to Tiny Face Detector, which is another face detection library that you can use, you'll see that it's much faster, but way less accurate. And because in my case, it didn't matter, speed didn't really matter, I've used the SSNet V1, but if you wanted to do face recognition on a video, for example, then Tiny Face would be great for that because it's much faster and you can process each image independently. All right, so face recognition, single reference point, scary and exactly what I needed. But of course, I'm assuming that your Twitter profile picture is an actual picture of you. It doesn't work if you wear a mask on your profile picture like a lot of people do, or if you have like your cartoon face, because it's not that good. All right, so how cool is that, right? I've got like all that information already, but I wanted to do more machine learning, and there's one little more thing that I wanted to add to that. I wanted to do sentiment analysis. If you're not familiar with sentiment analysis, also a really fun thing to play with. Basically, it just takes a piece of writing and it decides, or it analyzes it and it determines. There you go. If it's positive, negative, or neutral. So it'll give it a rating before -5 and +5. And based on that, you can make decisions, you can collect data, do data analysis, a lot of really, really fun stuff. Of course, I've used it for something less interesting, and we'll see it in a second. But to use it, npm install sentiment, just require the new sentiment object and use the analyze method, give it a string. So this is positive. That will score positive would probably be a very positive word. So a rating of 5 divided by 3 words. So 2.33, is that 130? I don't know. Something positive. And then the other method, something negative, has 2 words. One of them is negative, so that would give it a rating of -2.5. All right, so we're back on Twitter. All right, hopefully it will work this time. So and I'll actually just open up my my console here to make sure that I actually have something coming in. Oh, there's a tweet that came in by Damien. So, oh, come on, really?
We saw it in the text. We saw it in the text.
Yeah, it's there in the text. It's there, but I don't see the sentiment in here. But anyways, moving on. In theory, you should see it here. And they're colored with a shade of gray or green or red. I don't know why I thought about shade of gray. Green or red in order to detect if it's positive or negative here. All right, so what do I have so far? And there's so much more stuff that I need to cover. I'll need to start to speed up a little bit, but I've got some public data. I've got your face, I've got your tweets, I've got some information about you. Now I just needed to connect everything together. And that's actually like where I had a lot of fun. As I've mentioned already, it was not something that I was used to do. And I actually ended up having a lot of fun trying to connect everything. So the first thing I needed to do, I had all of those little snippets of code. They were already working. I didn't feel like, rewriting the whole thing and rewriting a big monolith. So I decided, why not go with microservices? I had heard about microservices, never really used them. So that was a great occasion for me to actually jump into it. Now I needed a way for each one of them to communicate to each other. So I've used messaging queue. I've used RabbitMQ for that. I needed a database. As I've mentioned, Twitter is rate limited, so you can't do that many calls on it. So storing the data and caching a lot of that data inside of a MongoDB database made my life a lot easier. If you're not familiar with MongoDB, there's the event. Damien will post the details in a few seconds, but I think it's April 14th. Was that what it was?
Exactly. Thank you.
At 9 p.m. It's a little bit late, at least for me or people my age, but but it's really interesting. Great platform to store some data. And then I needed a way to get all of those containers working together. So I've used Kubernetes. I've used OpenShift more specifically because I work for them, so I kind of had to. So microservices really helped me, saved me a lot of time. What I needed to do here was to use containers. If you're not familiar with containers, I have a talk called Containerization for Software Developers. I'll link to it at the end. But just in a nutshell, containers is a standard unit of software that packages up code and all of its dependencies. So basically, you can think of a container as being one big zip file, executable zip file that has not only your JS files, but it will also have everything that you need to run that JavaScript code. So instead of just shipping your one HTML, one CSS, and one JavaScript file, once you compiled your React application, you'll actually be shipping a whole Nginx server or an Apache server, web server, fully configured, up and running, with all of your content on it. So really, you package everything that you need and you ship that, which makes it a lot easier for reproducibility, making sure that it runs exactly the same everywhere on your production environment and on your machine. So it's a disposable unit as well. So that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind. If you want to persist some data, if you want to store the data in your database, you actually need to find a mechanism, but I'm not going into the details of that today. To use containers, you can use a tool such as Docker, which is the one that I'm using here. So you can see here that I did Docker run. I run it in detached mode, run it in the background. I mount some files from my file system into that container. So the container will be able to have access to some of my local files on my machine. And apart from that, they're completely isolated. I expose some ports so that I'm able to map a port on my local machine so that I'm actually able to ping inside that container on that port specifically. And then I can use an image, a base image. In this case, I'm using Node 14, which is all the runtimes, everything pre-configured with Node.js. And I just execute node/app to start that server inside my container. Really cool thing about a container is that you can easily switch between two versions. So in this case, if you need to migrate from Node 12 to Node 14, you can just change the version number and you'll be able to see the results, see if it still runs. You can also build your own containers if you want. There it is. There it is. So you can actually build your own containers. Basically, you'll use what is called a Docker file, which is a file called Docker file. And it just starts from a base image. And in there, you will use some commands to copy all of your source code. So you're starting from Node.js, an environment fully configured with Node and NPM. And then you just copy your source code and you have an image that you can then share with the rest of the world. So Docker build to use to build your own images, and then Docker push to push them to a shared repository or registry. Now, that was nice, but I needed a way for all of my containers to be able to talk with each other. And that was quite a challenge. The first thing that I thought about is and that's because of my background. That's what I've always done. I've always built REST APIs, and when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Is that the saying? So that's what happened. I tried to build a REST API for each one of my microservices, of my containers, and it quickly became a mess. It's really hard to keep track of all the asynchronous messages going on. And I received a message on Twitter, and then I needed to do a REST call to somewhere to store that data, and then wait for the response and do another call to do the face recognition on the profile image. So it quickly became a mess. So I looked at different alternatives, and I've discovered messaging queues. So message queue is a form of asynchronous service-to-service communication used in serverless and microservices architecture. That sounded pretty much like what I needed. Messages are stored in a queue until they're processed and deleted. So basically what you can do now that you have a messaging queue is that you'll just send a message to a queue. And at one point, you will have your consumer that will just pick up that message and process the information. And then when it's done, it will just send another message to another queue saying, hey, I completed whatever analysis I needed to do on this. Here is the information that I just extracted from my workload. So this is how it kind of works. So you've got a publisher and a consumer. The publisher will just send messages to the queue, and it just works. So in my case, I have services such as I have my microservice listening on Twitter, just looking for different things coming up. And whenever there's a new follower, I would send a message to a microservice or to the messaging queue that is associated with a microservice that transforms that data into just the data that I want to save in my database. So that is a relatively fast process. So as soon as I have a new follower, just sends that message, it's immediately picked up by my consumer. But when you start doing things like the face detection, you saw that it takes like a second to load that data. And when I did my initial run with all of my followers, I needed like that. It stacked up. Like those were really much slower than the transforming microservice. So the messages start to queue up. And what's nice when you're using microservices is that you can just spin up a new microservice that will also be consuming those messages. So it makes it a lot easier, and both of them will just, without ever conflicting, when you're using something such as RabbitMQ, they'll be able to process the messages each one at a time, and it will go twice as fast if you have two consumers now. When I started playing with messaging queues, I still had that REST API mindset. So I was trying to do a request and wait for a reply. You can actually do that with message queues, but it is not the best way to actually use them. So really what I ended up doing, and I'll get back to the whole architecture at the end, but really the way to use them is just send that message and forget about it, and wait for incoming messages. So to use a publisher, basically you will use amqplib, so npm install amqplib, and then you can connect to your server. You'll be able to create a channel, which is a queue, and then you will just send a message to a queue. Everything else is just boilerplate and my actual message that I'm sending. Then you'll need a consumer. The consumer is pretty much the same thing. It requires the amqplib library, connects to the server, create that channel or that queue, and then it will consume any message incoming, any incoming message in the same way as the Twitter stream did, right? There was this event called tweet, which came out all the time. So in here, I'm just waiting for any message in that queue, and then it will just trigger that message that just console logs some stuff here. So RabbitMQ, take a look at them. Really easy to use, nice library to do messaging queues. Now, the last thing that I needed to do was to deploy all of those things. So I had all of those microservices, all those containers. I needed a way for them to talk to each other. So I've used Kubernetes. If you're not familiar with Kubernetes, Kubernetes Kitchen is actually the presentation I gave last March at BocaJS. So you can take a look. There's a recording available on the BocaJS YouTube. So Kubernetes is a way to automate the deployment, scaling, management of all your containers. So basically, it's just an orchestrator. It takes care of managing all of your containers, making sure that they're always up and running. And if you need to spin up more or less, it actually has all the tooling necessary for that. So when, remember when I said I needed more of that container to process the images, well, I was able very easily with Kubernetes to just have more containers. And then it also takes care of all the networking. Remember I said I'm a software developer. I know nothing about networking, and I couldn't care less, quite frankly. It's not something that really passionates me. But Kubernetes just does all of that, like it's magic. So that really helped me out in here. All right, so Kubernetes, it uses those concepts called pods, deployments, and services. In a nutshell, this is it uses YAML file all the way. In theory, you can actually use JSON, but it turns out that using JSON is actually harder than YAML when playing with Kubernetes. But in theory, you could do it. This is what a deployment looks like. So you really describe like what you want running, how many pods, which are essentially containers, like how many containers do you want? Like in this case, I want 3 replicas of that container. I want, all those containers to run the following image. So you really describe exactly what you want, on what port everything is going to run, and then Kubernetes will do all the magic with that. So this is my deployment for RabbitMQ. So you can see here that, well, I have my RabbitMQ being deployed, and I have a single replica here. Now you can also use services. So services is the network magic that happens behind the scenes. So basically you tell Kubernetes, well, this is a service. So this is basically every incoming request to this service. So you're actually not contacting the pods or the containers directly. You're actually contacting a service, and the service will be in charge of finding all of your containers in your infrastructure. So if you have a gazillion large servers working, your service always know exactly where your pods are, exactly where your containers are, and it will actually send the information to those specific containers. So now that I have that inside of my cluster, I can actually use the name of my service, which is kind of a neat thing that you can use as well. You can just contact them by the DNS. It creates DNS entries, and yeah, cool stuff. So yeah, that's what I did. So this is what my actual application actually looked like. And yes, it was just a fun side project for which I spent like way too much time on it. But you can see here, like that's the whole infrastructure, like my whole architecture here. And yes, you can see my cursor here. So you've got my RabbitMQ messaging queue server here that handles all of my requests and handles all of the information that moves along this architecture. So I've got a Twitter container here, and this container's job is just to listen for any new followers. And when it gets one, it sends a message to RabbitMQ, which is then sent to or consumed by my server. My server detects that there's a new follower. What it will do is that it won't be able to consume, or it will check inside my MongoDB database to see if there's already an existing user with that handle or user ID. If it does not, it will send a message to RabbitMQ, which will be consumed by my transformer service that will just transform that into a format or data format that I want to save in my database. And it will send a message back to RabbitMQ saying, okay, we'll save this data, and just gives it the data to be saved, which is then saved into MongoDB. If it detects that there's a new follower, it will also need to do the face detection with the detector. It will do the sentiment analysis on the last tweet. It will do the face processing. So it will just dispatch all of those messages. All of those services will pick up those messages and then send a message back to RabbitMQ once it has processed that data and extracted the information. So the sentiment analysis, relatively quick. It'll just take the last tweet, give it a rating between 0 and 5, and then send a message back to RabbitMQ to be saved in the server. But the face detection one is a little bit slower. And then but when it's ready, it will just send that message back to RabbitMQ and take the next message in the queue. So really fun to use, really easy to use. So yeah. So what about the demo, right? Ultimately, that's just the only part that you want to see. Oh, yeah, it's just a warning. It'll probably fail because so far I'm not doing too good with demos. But let's still give it a try. So I've got this page here which is open, and so this is one of the last events that I did. That was in November. So I took a picture with some friends during this event, and there's the image, and there it is. It actually worked. Well, I'm probably more surprised than you are. Okay, so we've got an image here. Let me just get this out of the way, and we can see here that is at the other end here. That's Jeremy Mice, and I am Dog. So accurately detected, that worked. He scored an 80, so that's pretty good. I should definitely talk to him next time I see him at a conference. Now we've got here Todd Albert, which is Well, not Todd Albert, which is kind of funny. So that's what I told you, Todd. At every event where I give this presentation, you always come up.
Why do I only have a 60?
Well, apparently 60 is not 60 is
so does
okay.
That means that like almost half of my tweets are negative?
Well, that's the magic of machine learning, right? You never really know where the information comes from or where the data comes from, but it's not that bad. Like it's a passing grade. I mean, it's okay. Fine. Like I would probably talk to you next time I see you at an event. Thing is, it's actually not Todd there. That's actually me. So,
yeah, I was going to say, I thought the 60 was that you're 60% Todd.
No, so is it, am I reading it right that it's 53% certain that face belongs to Todd Albert, but that the 60 is the like social score that Todd Albert gets based on his tweets?
60 is the social score, exactly.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. So the 60 is my score. The 53 is how similar your face is to my, like how it's rating your face as mine.
Yeah, wow. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And lower the better, higher the better. I can't remember. There's yeah. Anyways, yeah, but it's over 50%, or it's close enough. And you can put it at threshold as well. But it seems like it's so far it was doing pretty good. The one thing, and it actually makes sense that it didn't detect me because I'm not one of my followers. So my face is not as part of my database of faces. So it kind of makes sense that it couldn't find me. But yeah, but it still recognized someone. Vincent Mayer's here, also not recognized accurately. This is Aaron Parecki, but Aaron wears a mask on his Twitter profile picture, so it kind of makes sense that it didn't detect him. And here's Bailey. That was actually accurately detected as well, but Bailey's scored a 16. So I should definitely not talk to her next time I see her at an event. So that kind of leads me to my unethical part of my talk, right? And that's one of the things. And Todd, you actually raised a point, right? Where does that number comes from exactly? And that's tricky. Like you will train your model, you'll give it some information, and ultimately you can look into it. And that's why there's a new job called data scientist, and people are actually able to make sense of that. But I am not one. I just built that for fun and obviously not to use that in the real world, but it came out of just a crazy idea. But this application is so unethical. Like there's no way I would ever release such a thing into the market. That is the worst thing that I could ever do. As a matter of fact, as you've seen, like Bailey, I would never talk to her according to that. I would barely talk to Todd here. So you know, like it's not a human decision. It's definitely based on some information that I've put in there. And it's obvious that it was biased right from the start, the criteria that I've used. So if you're ever going to do machine learning, be really aware of that. Be careful of the information that you're using. Be careful about the biases that you're putting in place. Get a lot of people to look at the information that you're going to analyze. Make sure that you have a diverse team to help you get some other opinions as well and get some different point of views. So there's been so many cases of unethical machine learning that came out through the years. And one of the big key elements to help with that is always having a diverse team that will be able to test the algorithms in different ways. All right, so that's kind of all I had today. So containerization for software developers, Kubernetes Kitchen, my 2 presentations. I'll link at the end. RabbitMQ, the getting started tutorial, very, very good. FaceAPI.js. Awesome library to use as well. Just before I leave, I'm going to take up some more of your time, just for fun. And I mean, this is a talk called Unethical Face Recognition. So I figured, I'll just take a picture while we were on the Zoom call earlier, because why not, right? And we'll try to see if I think where is it? That's the last one. All right, so let's see if anybody, let's see if we can detect anybody. Well, there you go. We've got Damien.
That is amazing.
Damien is scoring a 0.
0.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know not to talk to that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Does it go negative or 0 the absolute?
That's the absolute worst you can be.
You're trying to make me feel good, but at 0, I think clearly it doesn't matter.
Well, but there's probably some sort of error.
Matt is kicking behind. Look at Matt.
So Jeremy, if you want me to take over as co
organizer
for FloridaJS,
yeah,
I'll take over. We could get rid of this Damien guy.
I can't have a 0 on here.
Yeah.
But we've got Todd Albert here. I'm not sure if there's anybody else who got recognized because
I'm feeling really good about my 60 right now. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Holy smokes.
All right. So that's all I had. So thank you so much for being here. And if you want more information, all the links are at easyurl2/unethical. And that's it. Thank you.
Nice. Well done, man. Well done.
Thank you so much for fantastic presentation. Love it.
Joel, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yes,
of course.
Scott Ketterinsik. Yeah, I've got 2 questions. The first one is on all these different software products, the RabbitMQ, the Node.js. Are there any costs associated with using those? Do you have to pay any licensing fees or any of those?
Who pays for software nowadays? No, it's all open source. It's all open source projects.
Okay, that's good. That's the first question. Second question is, are you running these demos from like AWS or Azure? And what are the associated costs for running this typically?
So originally I ran it on OpenShift. And OpenShift is an enterprise product, and it is not a cheap product. It is very expensive. If you want to give it a try, there is one thing called the Developer Sandbox by OpenShift. And it's actually a 14 days trial of a full Kubernetes cluster, and it actually runs on that. If you look at the source code for this presentation, it's available on this link. Not this link, it's not there anymore. But you will find all the YAML files that you need to deploy the application as well. It might not be super well documented because I should be better at that. But in theory, everything is there. You'll be able to deploy that on OpenShift. It should work out of the box.
But the demo, like tonight, what would the cost be to run this demo? I mean, are you talking about like $10, $50?
Pennies, right? Pennies.
For OpenShift, we're talking like $600 a month. But DigitalOcean actually has a nice Kubernetes service that you can use as well if you want to run that tonight. And their lowest tier should be able to run it, and it starts at $10 a month, I think.
Okay.
So, Joel, it was 600 because you had it running all the time and listening to Twitter, things like that, right? Or why was it
a month, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's because
like
it's OpenShift. OpenShift already Kubernetes will run a lot of like right out of the box. Kubernetes runs its own services and containers to be able to load and run Kubernetes. So just to run itself, basically, you already have a cost associated to that. When you're using something such as Kubernetes, there's a lot, as OpenShift, there's a lot of additional stuff. Like there's this nice GUI that I've shown, which is really easy to use and makes your life so much easier. But it's also a process that needs to run. It's a web server that is running all the time. So you've got all those little bits and pieces running all the time, plus licensing fee and a few different things as well, and the hosting on AWS and so on. So that's why it's so costly. But DigitalOcean, they have a very good service. Well, interestingly enough, this morning they decided to shut down one of my websites. So I'm not sure if I should recommend them. But up until now, they actually did a very good job. It's very cheap and it's like the easiest and cheapest Kubernetes distribution that I found so far. I'd be happy to share. I've got a link with some free credits somewhere.
Please. Actually, we had a question. Pardon me, Ru. I know you have a question, but before you do that, would you be able to link the easy URL? URL is it easyurl.me?
Two, easy URL 2.
Oh, easy URL 2. Okay.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Ru. You had a question?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna ask. Did you sleep when you were?
Yeah, sleep is overrated, man. No, it's all of everything that I did here, and that's what I said right at the beginning. Like, if you're new into coding, like if you have a crazy, give it a try, explore different things. There's so many stuff that is already out there available as open source project. Face API was, and it took me a little bit of research to be able to find it, but ever since I found it, it was like, it completely changed the whole thing. Like it made everything so much easier. There's an API that I was able to use. Twitter I had already used in other project. I like Twitter. So I like to use it in my demos, and it works most of the time. And now Kubernetes, of course, that's my bread and butter nowadays. That's pretty much where I spend most of my time. And the RabbitMQ is something that I had to learn and to explore, but it's, it's such a great experience, and it's so fun to actually be able to play with those technologies. All of it being open source, which makes it even more awesome.
I remember hearing there was a faces.com, and they were doing something fascinating, which was similar to what you're doing and completely unethical, and the exactly same thing. They would log in, you would give them access to your Facebook by, through the OAuth, and all of a sudden they would log in through you. You've done all the work for them as far as machine learning, because you've identified every person in your family or you ever been to, you've tagged them, you've let me know that's the person, you let me know who are you and things like that. And they would download everything from you and then from everybody. And they would they promised that magic thing we all want, which is these glasses that I would look at people and don't have to remember their names, because I would see, okay, well, there's Joe, there's Ruth, there's Todd, you know what I mean? And it sounds wonderful until you realize, holy smokes, that's horrible, right? I mean, and not only, and this is from my guy with a 0 score on your rating.
But yeah, and you saw how, and that's one of the things that really blew my mind when I started playing around with Face API, is that with a single reference, but like one image is enough to be able to detect. And I don't know what your Twitter profile picture looks like, but that is all I have on you, and it's just from that one image I was able to recognize you from a screenshot that I took.
That's amazing.
So yeah, just for you all. Yeah,
mind
blown.
That's fantastic. Several people have loved every one of the GIFs you've used. Thank you very much for that. Those are amazing.
Oh yeah, Joel, that one. Is there a chance that you would be willing to share that? I think I need that. Because then whenever I reference you when I talk about it, I can use that GIF. That's amazing.
I'll be happy to share it afterwards.
GIF. Okay, I need that GIF in my life. I think Jose has his hand up as well.
Yeah. First of all, I wanted to thank. This is the first time I've been part of this, so thank everyone. Thank everyone for making this happen. I'm making also like a fun kind of app, but I'm working with like sculpture faces, and so I had like a little bit of difficulties, like as far as like the face landmarks. It's not able to pick up like because of like I guess skin tone. So I had to do a lot of my trainings. So do you know of any projects that use or any libraries that or any models that work better for like non-human faces? Like let's say you're like of sculptures per se.
Well, I haven't tried it. So, yeah, I can't think of anything. That's actually a very good question. I would definitely look into the cloud offerings from Microsoft and Google. They both have a very good offering of machine learning APIs that you can use. So I'm not sure if it would work with a sculpture. And
one last thing I want to say is like I've noticed like I'm using mostly Python libraries. So I've noticed like there's a difference between like actually embedding of like the image. Like once they recognize the face, they create an embedding, which is an array of like numbers or vectors. And then that's what they use for the facial recognition versus sometimes using, like you say, like the landmarks. So those are like the two things that I'm like trying to figure it out. When does a model use like embedding, and when does it actually use like only landmarks?
Mm-hmm. So I know that the face descriptor that faceapi.js uses, because they're called face descriptors, is what you'll use to do the face recognition. Mm-hmm. I know that they're based off the landmarks. Now, it is an array of numbers, so I have no clue what's in there. But from what I've read, it's usually based on ratios between those landmarks is usually what it is. But I might be completely wrong here. I'm definitely not a data scientist, but that was my understanding at this point. So yeah, they would kind of be the same thing. Basically, it would take those landmarks, do some maths on it, and use that as the face descriptor.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Damien, you're on mute. I see you talking, but you're on mute.
That's why he had a 0.
Clearly. There you go. I made Jeremy, yourself, Joel, and Todd co-hosts so that you'll be able to mute me. Apparently, you took it over. That was actually me. So one of the things that really interested me, and I didn't think about it, was that use the queues so that if we just bombarded you with Twitters, you'd be able to handle it by simply passing it along, right? That would be the idea. Like each person would go to one little system that would go and figure out the picture and all those things.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is a JS meetup, I wanted to spend more time on the JavaScript part than the messaging queue, but messaging queues are really cool. Like I was so excited when I started playing with them, and it's really a way to stack up all those messages. So if you have a service that is slow and takes some time to process the information, that's really where it comes into play. The first thing when I decided not to use a REST API, I decided to use WebSockets to be able to communicate. And I kind of had that idea in mind where I could send messages to one place, but that's the one thing where that would have bit me in the ass at some point, because I was trying to send all those messages to a single server that would then distribute all the messages, but it was just too much to handle. So using those messaging queues, it really stacks up the message. And the message in the case of my face recognition is like, here's the link to an image that we've downloaded inside a Kubernetes cluster. Please do the face detection or face recognition please collect the face descriptors on it. It would process that information, and then it would send a message to the server saying, hey, I've got some face descriptor with the label Joel Lord. Please add that to the database. And when I run a when I pass it an image, it just uses the data inside the database. But really, that service was a little bit slow. And when I did my initial run, I just spun up a few more, and all the magic happens there. Each one takes a message, and it kind of marks it as this message is being processed. And as long as I haven't acknowledged that the message was successfully processed, the message is there in the queue and is waiting for an acknowledgement of some sort. And if after a certain timeout, nothing happened, it just releases that message and puts it back into the queue. So now you just need to manage, okay, I've done processing that data. Here's a message saying that, yes, I did process the data, and then the message gets deleted from the queue. So it works really well with containers as well. If at some point, one of your container crashes for some reason, it doesn't matter. It will another one will start, and that message will just go back to the end of the queue at some point.
Yeah. That's how we do things with the mainframe. Don't laugh at my work. We still have the mainframe, and yeah, we pass everything from the queue, and yeah, it's just like magic. I don't think about it, and then it comes back all processed and done. But this one really clarified it for me, Joe. Thank you so much for that.
Good.
Yeah. I saw one. I saw a meetup that was a little bit earlier, I think last year, and one of the best things was, you got to be careful with your data, similar to what Jose was talking about, where they were sending it. It was just a sample showcase, so they were going to send a bunch of dogs and a bunch of bears, and the system was going to figure out which one. And then every so often they would get it wrong, and then they realized that they were sending bears, but all the bears were only in the winter, so there was snow everywhere. So what the system ended up figuring out is you were trying to ask it whether there was snow in the picture or not.
Yeah.
And so it figured that out. So it's like that's not a dog, that's a bear. It's like, yeah, but there's snow. So there you go. You're welcome, right? And so it's amazing that you have to be careful with the data, similar to what Jose is doing.
There was a similar thing with World War II tanks and like the US versus the Russian tanks. And it's something in the background that it recognized that it was like, okay, well, it was based on whatever the location or something in the background was the weirdest thing.
Jose, I would love to hear more, either a presentation or just at the next meetup about what you found, if you get that working, as far as the sort of sample data of art and faces of art and sculptures. Now, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that project sounds really cool, Jose.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear from that.
I'm like trying to. It's based on. I'm just gonna say a few things. It's just based on. I'm Peruvian. And there's like vessels that are pre-Inca, so they're like I think 1,000 years old. So I'm trying to find like similarities between like people from today, Peruvians, so that they can find their similar whatever like vessel that was done, so that you can show it like that people are still around, like they still look the same. But so that's where like I was asking that it takes a little bit of time. If you're just doing human faces, it's already been done. So I had to like do train my to do the face recognition first, or the face detection, right? Like, and then that's working, but the face actually getting the landmarks, that's where it's like saying like I don't see anything.
I think Jose, if you know, I think what you may want to be looking at is not using like computer vision, but actually using like 3D imaging and getting the actual shape face, which is actually like you know, there's a lot of cool projects that use the Microsoft Kinects, I think, has like these dual infrared cameras that can do like 3D detection. It's similar to how like on an iPhone the face detection works. It works in the dark because it actually like projects like a 3D grid of points and looks at the shape of your face. It's not trying to use like a photograph of your face to recognize it.
You know, actually that there's now that you mentioned that, I've used like I mainly use Python, but there's like projects like right now like based on just the picture, it's able to recognize like it's a machine learning model, so it recognizes like depth, and it creates a 3D based on one picture. So
right. Yeah. Very cool. I just want to mention everybody, you know, I just watched last night Coded Bias, which just came out on Netflix, and it is phenomenal. And you'll recognize some of the books and some of the authors. You know, I'm sure Joel, you've probably read a couple of books that are, you know, that they speak about. Oh, look at that.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look at that Netflix documentary. But just as you were talking, I've gave it a try with just an old bust of Joel Caesar, and it seems like it does the face landmarks. So in theory, it should be able to do some sort of recognition with that data as well. So
cool stuff.
And the sounds awesome. And Todd, do you want to finish the comment?
No, just definitely watch Coded Bias on Netflix. Like 100% recommend it. Couldn't say enough about it. Just watch it.
Very good. Okay. Not stopping the conversation, but I always end the meeting with our chance to win our license from our people at JetBrains. You're welcome, of course, Joel, to join. So if you guys want to all join me at win.floridajs.com. Again, this is a perfect time to talk because of the fact that everybody takes a little bit of time. Once you go there with your device, you'll be able to get the ticket. The tickets will show up on the screen. I forgot to reset the tickets, so we'll make sure that one of you gets the right thing. But anyways, having said that, we can continue the conversation. Please let me know if there is
I think it's
once
cool.
everybody has it.
I think it's cool that they're not reset, like, because then you're always getting like higher numbers, you know.
Yeah, but the problem is I could choose something below 16. I think at the first.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not
that's
going to
okay.
randomly choose between 16 and 21.
No, it doesn't, because I have to reset it, right? It doesn't know if
Ah.
you just took a long time to get the tickets or not. It took a week.
I see.
Oh, so this isn't current.
This is current. So go ahead and do
Yeah,
it. Your number that you have on your screen should show up on the main screen here.
Right.
Oh.
So if you go and you visit, if you
Yep.
go and visit winfloridajs.com, it'll tell you your ticket number.
And that should be on the screen.
And then if Damien calls, Damien calls 17, I win, but I'll give it to one of you.
Not very nice. So in the so like I said, similar to what you're doing, it sounds like that documentary is all about sort of making sure that your data is diverse enough that it's capable and things like that, right, Todd?
Yeah, it's so the author of Weapons of Math Destruction and the author of Algorithms of Oppression, I believe, are both in the movie. I mean, it focuses mostly on the algorithms of math destruction, but it's really cool. I mean, great story, well told, but also an important message, and ends with some positive news, I think, moving in positive directions. So
I love it. All right, has everybody had a chance to? Thank you. Has everybody had a chance to go to win.floridajs.com?
I think we got.
I think so. We have some people. Joel, you had at the top about 28 people. I think some people drop in and come in and out throughout the day. It's a heck of a show up, especially for virtual. I'm going to go ahead and choose a winner, and you guys should see it both on your screen and on the main screen. It's going to ignore that because that's probably not any one of you. As you can see,
19.
We do have a winner.
Steve
Who's 19?
Bonish. Steve.
Is that so? Joel, how did you know? How did you know? Oh, you saw him jump up and down?
Yeah, he was waving his arms.
Very good. Steve, have you gotten the prize before?
I have not.
All right, Steve. So do you remember how to? So get a hold of me either in the Grammar Hub, that, or any which way you'd like, or in the Palm Beach, South Florida Tech. Oh my gosh, is it South Florida Tech Hub, South Florida? Oh my
Tech
goodness.
Hub, South Florida.
Yes. So Tech Hub, SouthFlorida.org. So come join us there. Send me a message, Steve. I'm on every Slack I think that you're on. So send me a message and I'll send you the license.
Would you Slack that you're on, Steve.
Exactly.
That's why it's 0. You can hear them everywhere.
Exactly. That's why it's enough, and people
you
are
don't need to talk to them anymore.
So it's JetBrains. What Steve will get is a license to any JetBrains tool for about a year worth of upgrades, and then he actually can keep that software for the rest of his life. That's how lucky Steve is. That's how lucky you're going to be next time when you win. I hope to see you all next time. We don't have to finish the end. You'll see other events over here at the very bottom of the website, FloridaJS.com. So do join us there. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you, everybody, for coming to join us. We don't have to stop the conversation, but it is it is something that
happens.
That we'll see. Exactly.
It does happen. Joel, thanks so much, man. It was great seeing you. I got to bounce, but I also. Thanks to all my BocaJS or Boca Code peeps.
Indeed.
It was a great show out. And Joel, always awesome to have you. Damien, you got to get by the school sometime, meet the new cohort.
Love to. I'll come one of these days.
Nice seeing you, Todd. Hopefully next time in person.
Yes. I love it, Joel. Please, that would be amazing. It'll make it the 5th time, and I love it each time.
We have a great space for giving talks here.
We could do it there. That sounds good. You'll love it there.
Sponsorship.
It was a pleasure to you guys. Great.
Thank you, Ru.
I'm very interested. Like now, I'm starting to think about face recognition, and I've only been 2 days into code. So, yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
The chat does go away for everybody else, for you, and for everybody else. If there is some links that you still got to get from the chat, get it right now. The moment I finish the conversation, the chat goes away, just to let everybody else know. If you are, since I'm a zero because I'm on all the Slacks, do reach out to me. I do have all the links that we talked about here in the chats, so I can share them with you if you need. Steve, do get a hold of me still. Haven't seen a Slack from you yet. I'm always ready. I mean, so. And Joel, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Anybody needs to say anything or something like that, please do so.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, everyone.
Joel.
Thank you, everyone.
Very good. Thank you so much.